There's a devastating truth most men discover too late. The exact moment you beg someone to stay is the precise moment you've already lost them. Nobody teaches you this. Schools don't cover it. Your father probably never mentioned it. You learn it the hard way, alone, usually at 2 a.m., staring at a phone screen, wondering where everything went wrong. Life throws countless challenges at a man. Career setbacks, financial struggles, physical injuries. But nothing prepares you for the specific pain of watching someone you love slowly pull away. That helpless feeling when her texts get shorter. When her eyes stop lighting up. When she's physically present but emotionally gone. In that moment, every instinct screams the same thing. Fight harder. Hold tighter. Don't let go. So you do what feels natural. You explain yourself. Again and again. You apologize for things you didn't even do. You promise to change everything about yourself. You ask for one more chance. Then another. Then another. It feels noble, doesn't it? Fighting for love. Refusing to give up. Showing her how much you care. But here's what nobody tells you until it's too late. Desperation has a smell. Women sense it instantly. And it repels them faster than anything else you could possibly do. You think you're showing love. She sees weakness. You think you're demonstrating commitment. She sees neediness. You think you're fighting for the relationship. She watches you lose yourself completely. Every desperate text you send confirms her decision. Every emotional plea pushes her further away. Every time you beg, you hand over more of your power, your dignity, your identity. And you can't negotiate attraction back into existence. It doesn't work that way. Never has. Never will. The uncomfortable reality? When she's already mentally checked out, convincing her to stay creates nothing real. Nothing lasting. You might get a temporary pause. A few more weeks. Maybe months if you're lucky. But you're not rebuilding the relationship. You're just delaying the funeral. She might stay out of guilt. She might stay because she feels sorry for you. But guilt isn't attraction. Pity isn't desire. And a relationship built on either one is already dead. Here's what actually happens when you beg. You confirm her suspicions. You prove that your entire emotional world depends on her decision. You show her that without her validation you're nothing. And no woman wants to be responsible for a man's entire existence. That's not partnership. That's a burden. Strong relationships require two complete people choosing each other freely. Not one person desperately clinging while the other looks for the exit. So the question becomes simple. When she's already leaving, what does begging actually accomplish? It doesn't bring her back. It just destroys what's left of the man she once respected. Attraction operates on a frequency that desperation can never reach, no matter how loud you beg. This is the part that breaks most men. They think love is logical. They believe emotions can be argued. They assume that if they just present their case clearly enough, she'll suddenly understand and change her mind. But attraction isn't a courtroom. You don't win her back with closing arguments. Emotionally intelligent men handle relationship fractures differently. They don't chase validation. They don't force heavy conversations at midnight. They don't send paragraph-long texts explaining their feelings for the 100th time. Instead, they recognize something brutal. If she's already mentally packed her bags, convincing her to stay creates nothing authentic. You might delay her departure. But you're not rebuilding connection. You're constructing a prison where both of you suffer. Think about what begging actually communicates. You're telling her that your happiness depends entirely on her choice. Your stability requires her presence. Your identity needs her approval to exist. That's not love. That's dependency. And dependency kills desire faster than anything. She might feel sympathy watching you fall apart. She might even feel guilty for causing your pain. But sympathy doesn't make her want you. Guilt doesn't spark attraction. These emotions just make her pity you while she plans her exit. Here's what most men miss completely. Respect forms the invisible foundation of attraction. Without respect, desire cannot survive. And nothing destroys respect faster than watching a grown man abandon his dignity for validation. When you beg, you're not showing her how much you care. You're showing her that you don't care about yourself. You're proving that your self-worth is negotiable, that your dignity has a price, that you'll sacrifice anything just to keep her around. And that realization changes how she sees you permanently. The man she once admired disappears. In his place stands someone she doesn't recognize. Someone weak. Someone desperate. Someone who needs her more than he respects himself. True relationship strength shows up differently. It appears when a man refuses to sacrifice his self-respect under emotional pressure. Not because he doesn't care about the connection, but because he understands something deeper. His dignity must exist regardless of whether the relationship survives. This is the shift that changes everything. When a man stops placing his emotional identity in someone else's hands, something powerful happens internally. He stops seeing relationships as his entire world. They become important, yes. Valuable, absolutely. But not the foundation of his existence. His ambitions return to focus. His discipline sharpens. His personal growth reclaims priority. And here's the paradox nobody expects. This exact moment, when he stops chasing, is often when the entire dynamic begins shifting in ways he never anticipated. The most powerful thing you can do when someone walks away is absolutely nothing. Silence. Space. Complete emotional withdrawal. This goes against everything your heart screams at you to do. Your mind races with strategies. Maybe one more conversation. Maybe one more explanation. Maybe if you just reach out differently this time. But here's what actually happens when you refuse to chase. The emotional pressure she's been feeling instantly evaporates. She's no longer being pursued through desperation. No dramatic texts. No late-night calls. No emotional manipulation disguised as honesty. Just quiet acceptance. And that changes everything about how she processes the situation. When you were begging, she felt responsible for your emotions. She had to manage your pain while dealing with her own confusion. Every message from you added weight to her shoulders. Every plea made her feel trapped. But when you walk away cleanly, that burden lifts. Now she's alone with her own thoughts. No emotional chaos to navigate. No guilt trips to defend against. Just silence and her memories of who you actually were. This is when something unexpected starts happening in her mind. She begins seeing you differently. Not as the desperate man who couldn't let go, but as someone who chose self-protection over self-destruction. Someone who valued his dignity more than clinging to a dying relationship. Dignity carries authority that desperation never will. A man who calmly walks away sends a clear message without speaking. His self-respect isn't negotiable. His worth doesn't depend on her decision. He'll survive whether she stays or disappears. That quiet strength hits differently than any emotional speech ever could. Most men don't beg because they're inherently weak. They beg because they're drowning emotionally. When someone you've genuinely invested in suddenly withdraws, your nervous system goes into panic mode. Your brain floods you with memories. Every good conversation. Every laugh. Every intimate moment. It's like your mind is desperately trying to remind you what you're losing, hoping you'll find some way to reverse it. In that emotional storm, logic disappears. You start believing that the right words will fix everything. The perfect explanation will make her remember what you had. Enough emotion will break through her walls. But attraction doesn't respond to logical arguments or emotional intensity. The second you start convincing someone of your value, you've already lost the frame. You've already positioned yourself beneath them. You've already communicated that her opinion of you matters more than your opinion of yourself. And she feels that shift immediately. Her perception changes in that instant. The man who once stood confidently in his own life now appears as someone desperately seeking her approval. Someone whose stability crumbles without her validation. That image doesn't inspire desire. It inspires discomfort. Sometimes even disgust. You can do everything right and still lose. That's not failure, that's relationships. This reality devastates men because it violates every principle we're taught about effort and reward. Work hard, get results. Invest time, see returns. Be loyal, receive loyalty back. But relationships don't operate on merit-based systems. You can be the most supportive partner. Show up consistently for months or years. Be patient through her worst days. Remain committed when things get difficult. Do everything the relationship experts recommend. And she can still decide to leave. That's the part that feels fundamentally broken. The injustice of it. You built something real together. You invested genuine emotion, time, and energy. You earned the right to be chosen, didn't you? Except relationships aren't about earning rights. They're about continuous choice. When things start falling apart, your instinct screams to fight. You built this connection with your bare hands. You're not going to watch it crumble without doing something. That impulse feels righteous. Noble even. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. Fighting for a relationship through emotional pleading doesn't repair anything. It accelerates the collapse. Every desperate attempt to fix things pushes her further away. Not because she's cruel, but because begging fundamentally alters how she perceives you. Respect is the invisible architecture holding attraction together. Once that foundation cracks, the entire structure becomes unstable. And nothing fractures respect faster than watching someone abandon their dignity trying to keep you around. When she sees you willing to sacrifice your self-respect just for her presence, the power dynamic shifts instantly and irreversibly. She might still care about you. She might still remember the good times. She might even feel guilty about leaving. But caring isn't attraction. Memories aren't desire. Guilt isn't respect. Her perception of you transforms completely. The man who once stood confidently in his own identity now appears dependent on her validation for basic stability. His entire emotional world revolves around her decision. And that image repels her on an instinctive level. This is why men who maintain composure during breakups create entirely different impacts than those who fall apart. When a man accepts the situation calmly, even while it's destroying him internally, he communicates something powerful without needing words. He values himself enough not to chase someone already walking away. That calm acceptance feels impossible because every human instinct demands we fight for what we love. Our biology screams at us to hold tighter when things slip away. But choosing dignity over desperation preserves something irreplaceable. Something that once lost never fully returns. Your self-respect. You can rebuild relationships. You can find new connections. You can even sometimes reconcile with someone who left. But you cannot rebuild self-respect after you've watched yourself beg. That image stays with you. It changes how you see yourself in mirrors. Silence is the most powerful response to someone who expected chaos. Self-respect isn't something you can negotiate back into existence once it's gone. You can't apologize your way back to dignity. You can't explain yourself back into strength. Once you've begged, that version of you exists in her memory permanently. But here's where things get interesting. This is often the exact moment when her entire perception starts shifting in ways neither of you anticipated. When she expects you to fall apart but encounters calm distance instead, it disrupts everything she prepared for mentally. She expected the emotional explosion, the desperate messages at midnight, the long paragraphs explaining your feelings, the attempts to rehash every argument in memory. Instead, she gets silence. Complete, undisturbed silence. And that silence creates space for something begging never could. Reflection. Without your emotional noise filling her phone, her mind, her daily life, she's left alone with her actual thoughts about the relationship. Not her reactions to your reactions. Not her defenses against your arguments. Just her raw, unfiltered thoughts. That's when memories start surfacing differently. The calm moments you shared. The stability you brought. The ways you supported her that she stopped noticing. The small things you did that she took for granted. These memories don't appear because you reminded her. They surface because your absence created room for them. She remembers you not as the desperate man who couldn't let go, but as the person you were before everything fell apart. This response generates curiosity because it contradicts her entire script. She thought she knew how this would play out. She expected you to chase, to plead, to make her feel guilty, to force conversations she didn't want to have. But you did none of that. You simply accepted her decision and moved forward with your life. That unexpected response makes her question whether she truly understood who you were, whether she misjudged your strength, whether walking away was actually the right decision. Now here's the critical part most men misunderstand completely. This isn't a manipulation tactic. You're not using silence as a strategy to make her come back. That mindset ruins everything because it's still rooted in trying to control her response. Real strength isn't about controlling her reaction. It's about accepting whatever happens while protecting your own dignity regardless. Sometimes she will come back. Sometimes weeks or months later, curiosity gets the better of her. She reaches out casually, testing whether you've changed, whether the connection still exists. And sometimes she moves on completely. Never looks back. Finds someone else. Forgets you existed. Both outcomes happen in reality. Neither one defines your value as a man. Because the most important transformation already occurred inside you. The version of you that believed begging could save love died. In its place emerged someone who understands a fundamental truth about healthy relationships. The right connection never requires you to abandon self-respect to maintain it. The moment you stop begging is the moment you start living again. When you're pleading with someone to stay, you unknowingly surrender your entire emotional stability to their hands. Your peace depends on their response. Your happiness hinges on their decision. Your worth gets determined by whether they choose you. That's not a relationship. That's emotional hostage-taking. And you're doing it to yourself. But when a man chooses to step back instead of pleading, something breaks. That invisible chain connecting his identity to her approval snaps completely. He reminds himself of something he forgot during the relationship. His life didn't begin when he met her. It won't end because she left. This realization lands like a punch to the chest. Painful but necessary. It's one of the most crucial psychological shifts a man can experience. Because once he truly understands that his identity cannot depend on someone else's choice, everything changes about how he moves through the world. Complete emotional independence becomes possible for the first time. Relationships stop feeling like fragile glass structures requiring constant vigilance to prevent shattering. They transform into experiences that either grow naturally or fade naturally. If the connection is genuine, it continues without force. If it dies, chasing only delays the inevitable. This perspective removes massive amounts of anxiety from daily life. He stops approaching love terrified that one wrong move destroys everything. He stops walking on eggshells. He stops editing himself to fit someone else's expectations. Instead, he understands something liberating. The right person stays because she genuinely values the connection. Not because he convinced her to. Not because he begged perfectly. Not because he sacrificed his dignity at her altar. When a man internalizes this truth, his entire presence transforms. His conversations feel different, calmer, less desperate for specific outcomes. His decisions become more deliberate. His emotional energy stabilizes instead of swinging wildly based on her mood. People around him sense the shift. He's someone who stands firmly in his own identity now. Not arrogant. Not closed off. Just grounded. That stability radiates outward without him needing to advertise it. Many men only reach this understanding after their heart gets shattered. Usually by the relationship they cared about most. The one they thought would last forever. When that connection suddenly vanishes, the temptation to beg becomes overwhelming. The mind craves immediate reversal of the loss. It wants to undo what just happened. But loss cannot be bargained away through desperation. Desperation only confirms what she already suspected. The emotional balance has collapsed. The foundation has cracked. The dynamic that once worked has broken beyond simple repair. Real strength shows up differently. It appears when a man faces loss without abandoning himself. When someone chooses to walk away and he responds with acceptance instead of panic. Not because he feels nothing. The pain is real and deep. But because he refuses to destroy his dignity attempting to clutch something that no longer belongs to him. Heartbreak doesn't destroy strong men, it creates them. A man who values his own respect communicates something powerful without ever speaking about it. His identity isn't fragile. His worth doesn't require external validation to exist. He knows who he is regardless of who stays or leaves. This kind of emotional composure catches people off guard completely. Most expect relationship endings to produce chaos. Heated arguments. Emotional outbursts. Desperate attempts to salvage what's clearly broken. Late-night drunk texts. Public displays of pain. But when a man walks away quietly instead of collapsing, the entire situation transforms. The emotional pressure vanishes. No dramatic scenes. No forced conversations. No attempts to manipulate her into reconsidering. Just clean acceptance of reality. That acceptance creates a completely different psychological impact than desperation ever could. Because when someone expects to be chased but encounters calm distance instead, their mind starts working overtime. Questions begin surfacing. Why isn't he fighting? Why isn't he begging? Did I misread his level of investment? Did I matter less than I thought? She begins questioning the situation, wondering why the man she assumed would fall apart simply chose to move forward. This doesn't guarantee she comes running back. Reality doesn't work like movies. Sometimes she moves on completely, starts dating someone new, never looks back. That happens and it's perfectly fine. Because the man who walked away with dignity carries something forward far more valuable than any temporary relationship. His self-respect remains completely intact. And self-respect changes everything about how he approaches what comes next. Once he understands that begging destroys attraction while dignity preserves it, he starts moving through all future relationships with fundamentally different energy. Energy built on confidence instead of fear. Groundedness instead of anxiety. Self-assurance instead of constant need for reassurance. After painful breakups, most men sit alone replaying everything obsessively. Every conversation gets analyzed. Every disagreement gets dissected. Every moment where different words might have changed outcomes. The mind constructs elaborate alternate realities. If I had done this differently. If I had said that instead. If I had been more attentive, less available, more romantic, less needy. Maybe she'd still be here. During this phase, the urge to reach out again becomes nearly unbearable. To reopen the door that already slammed shut. To try one more time with better words, clearer explanations, more genuine emotion. But here's what experience eventually teaches. The past cannot be repaired through explanations. A relationship that collapsed under emotional imbalance cannot be revived by injecting more of the same emotional energy that caused the collapse initially. This is why the strongest men eventually learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. Walking away from someone you genuinely loved isn't easy. The silence after breakup feels suffocating. Shared routines suddenly vanish. Moments arrive where her absence screams louder than any argument ever did. The man who walked away broken returns unbreakable. But the man who refuses to beg forces himself to face pain directly instead of escaping through desperate messages and emotional negotiation. Something unexpected happens during that brutal process. He slowly starts rediscovering parts of himself that got buried under the relationship. Pieces of his identity that disappeared while he was busy being someone's boyfriend. When people spend extended time emotionally invested in someone, their world naturally contracts around that connection. Daily thoughts orbit the relationship. Future plans revolve around the relationship. Emotional energy gets consumed by the relationship. Then when that relationship ends, all that space suddenly becomes empty. Initially, that emptiness feels like drowning. Like falling through darkness with nothing to grab onto. But given time, that same emptiness transforms into opportunity. It becomes the exact space where a man starts rebuilding himself. Not for revenge. Not to prove anything to her or anyone else. But to reclaim control over his own life's direction. This rebuilding process is where genuine masculine strength gets forged. He redirects focus toward life areas he completely neglected while chasing the relationship. Physical discipline returns with intensity. The gym becomes sanctuary instead of obligation. His body starts changing, getting stronger. Ambitions that fell dormant suddenly wake up demanding attention. Goals he postponed indefinitely now feel urgent and possible. Projects he abandoned get resurrected. Friendships he let fade get rebuilt. Hobbies that brought him joy before her return to his daily routine. Because he finally realizes something crucial. Life doesn't pause simply because a relationship ended. The world keeps spinning. Opportunities keep appearing. Time keeps moving whether he's ready or not. As reconstruction continues, something internal fundamentally shifts. The emotional desperation that controlled his actions begins dissolving. That constant anxiety about losing her. That fear of being alone. That belief his happiness required her presence. All of it starts fading. In its place, quiet confidence grows. Not arrogance. Not bitterness. Just solid self-assurance. The confidence of someone who survived what felt like emotional annihilation and came out stronger on the other side. This transformation is powerful because it permanently changes how he approaches every relationship that follows. Next time he connects with someone, he doesn't construct his entire identity around fear of losing her. He doesn't make her approval the foundation of his self-worth. He doesn't sacrifice his goals, friendships, or discipline trying to keep her happy. Instead, he enters that new connection as someone who already knows his life holds value with or without it. That difference seems subtle, but it completely transforms the relationship's emotional balance. A man no longer terrified of loss carries himself entirely differently. His attention feels genuine without desperation coating every interaction. His presence radiates strength because it comes from someone who already survived complete rebuilding. The irony becomes clear. The man who once begged becomes the man who never needs to again. Real men don't beg, they rebuild. They don't chase, they choose. They don't break, they become unbreakable. And in that transformation lies the most powerful form of attraction. A man who knows his worth regardless of who stays or leaves. Subscribe. Protect your peace. And never beg again.